How's it going, y'all? And welcome to Castaway Anime, your favorite anime podcast. As always, I'm Neon Manta.
And I'm Crunchy Bagels.
And we're very glad that y'all joined us on this, the 2024 Halloween special of the podcast. Today's spooky catch of the day features the highly anticipated but dreadfully produced Uzumaki 2024 anime. If you brave souls enjoy the podcast, I want to hear more of our objectively correct takes. Ooh, registered trademark. Then be sure to subscribe to us here on Castaway Anime on YouTube and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode of the best, spookiest anime podcast. Happy Halloween, Crunchy.
You know, Uzumaki has actually inspired me to make an AMV, you see. I was watching the final episode and I just saw all these clips that I wanted to put together. And I think I have the perfect song for it.
I mean, I can barely hear it through the audio. It probably sounds better on your end.
On Audacity, it's like louder than my voice. I don't even know how that's possible.
It's coming in very warped on my end, but it sounded like clown music, and this is a circus.
No, it's Spiral Mountain from Banjo-Kazooie.
Oh, wow, I could not tell at all.
Fuck you, Discord. I came up with that joke while I was waiting for like the 10 minutes before you were in, and I thought it was the funniest thing ever, and now it's ruined.
Blame Discord.
It's as disappointing as the anime itself. It's thematically relevant.
Yeah, it's what a perfect segue. Yeah, so today we're not only talking about Uzumaki, the 4-episode miniseries, but we're also diving a bit into the manga. Originally we were going to try to read the whole thing, but then we found out that it's like 600 pages long, and we didn't have time to read the whole thing, so we just checked out the first volume, which is essentially part 1 of 3 of Uzumaki the manga.
Yeah, so I've had a bit of the manga experience, just enough to see how badly the anime butchered it.
Yeah, I watched the anime first, and then I read the manga.
I read the manga first because
Ooh,
I was
so
not having the worst version first.
Because I
promised myself I'd read the manga first.
Okay. And did you only get the first volume done?
Yeah, I only read the first volume. Also in subpar conditions, I was reading it on a computer because
bro did not get the $35 hardcover that contains the entirety in one book.
I'm a cheap ass right now. I want to save money. So no, I'm not buying anything if I can help it.
Any self-respecting fan of anime and manga's gotta have Uzumaki on their shelf.
I will say the first volume that I read on a computer did inspire me to want to get it someday when I'm not broke.
Yeah, especially because when you look at the manga art and compared to the anime, it's kind of night and day.
You know, I guess because my standards were so low, given the couple of, you know, because there's the clips that are going around of the especially shoddy bits of animation. But if you actually look at it as a whole, like, it's not that bad.
It's not the worst, ugliest anime I've ever seen, although, like, all right, so first of all, let's go into it like this. Episode 1 is the best episode.
Kind of. I mean, I agree in terms of the overall package. I actually think episode 4 was just the most interesting to me, but I think that's just being hard carried by what actually happens in the manga. But in terms of the overall
4 was the actually, I was gonna say episode 4 is the worst, but kind of it is.
Episode
you're
3
right.
was the worst to me.
No, episode 2 was okay because we're going all over the place, kind of like a spiral. Haha. Okay. So big problem with the anime that got memed on online was that people were sucking off episode 1, being like, "Oh my god, like finally Junji Ito is getting the work, the anime his critically acclaimed manga deserves." And then episode 2 came out, and they were like, "Oh, we spoke too soon."
Yeah, because episode 1 is astonishingly gorgeous. I really love the visuals of that episode. And then they kind of fall off a cliff. I mean, okay, that I don't want to exaggerate it too much because my I thought it was going to be like just almost unwatchably bad
It's not.
considering
It's
what
not Blue
clips
Lock season 2
were.
bad.
Yeah,
We'll give it its flowers.
the art it still has detail fairly consistently, more than you'd see in like an average random seasonal anime, definitely. It's sometimes off model, but not like horrible, you know. They it looks fine, I guess, on an average shot past the first episode. The issue is you've teased me with the first episode that looked great the whole way through, and then you said actually it's not gonna be that good on average, and then we're going to show the bits where it's clearly unfinished. Like the falling scene from episode 4 that got memed on Twitter. Oh,
Because
he,
it's
he
just a
falls off the
PNG,
tower.
dude.
I mean, even like early on into episode 2, there was that shot of the boy and the girl in the building hiding away from, the families fighting in the row house, right? And it's
Hmm.
like the
And
crustiest image of
they
the
commit the cardinal
building.
sin. Yeah, they commit the cardinal sin of zoom shots where instead of redrawing the background, but in a more close up point of view, they just zoomed in on the original background itself.
It is very. You can taste the pixels.
You can cut yourself on how sharp those pixels are. And then in the same episode too, when the boy and the girl are running with Shuichi and Kirie on the beach, they're having like their run cycles are like they're in place, but they feel like they're just getting dragged up along the beach. Like there's no illusion of movement. They're just like running in place, but the animators are just moving them, like dragging them in the fucking Adobe Animate.
Yeah, there were quite a few shots like that, especially in episode 2 is when I noticed it the worst, but there are some later on.
But then for
It's
some reason, the good animation came back in episode 3.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, it never hits the peaks of episode 1. It's just kind of it just feels obviously unfinished, where it's not consistently terrible in the way that something that is just spat out of the machine for seasonal slop, isekai. It's not like that. It'll look good for certain shots, and the art does have a fairly consistent amount of detail. It's just that the holes are there. You can see the patchwork barely keeping it together.
And you know what the damnedest thing is? We were waiting 5 years for a 4-episode miniseries.
I am curious as to what mismanagement went down because I've heard that there was some. I haven't looked into it, but
Okay, so
there
I'm just
has to
going
have
off
been.
of I'm looking at the Wikipedia article for the Uzumaki anime. Just to give you and the audience a timetable of events. So the anime was announced back in Crunchyroll Expo 2019. It was going to be a co-production with Production IG USA and Adult Swim. So the My Adventures of Superman sneaks its way into everything. You cannot escape the demon, Crunchy. uh, it was going to premiere on the Toonami block on Adult Swim. Uh, apparently production. They at first they said that the COVID-19 pandemic had no effect on production, but then that was like right at the beginning of the outbreak in March 25th, excuse me, 2020. Then as the pandemic rolled on, they shared some images, they shared some storyboards on the Twitter, but then they were like, yeah, no, we're gonna have to like delay it because the pandemic forced them to quote restructure their entire plan for the anime from scratch, and then that the anime would then be delayed into October 2022. But then they said Actually, the anime is going to be delayed at the request of the production staff because we need more time. This cake is not yet ready. It needs more time to be baked. And then in 2023, they showed off a new clip at San Diego Comic-Con. They did not give a time frame, but the creative director Jason DeMarco did say on Twitter that the show would come out in 2023. It did not come out in 2023. And then finally, it came out in September, late September 2024 this year. Got an English dub the following week, and it's coming out on Netflix in Asia. And then the most peculiar thing, which got me throwing up a few eyebrows. The anime was originally announced that it was going to be made by Studio Drive, which did Konosuba Season 3. But then there were some articles in July 2023 saying that Studio Akatsuki, who, if you remember, they made Building C. Remember that one 4-episode horror anime that we covered on the seasonal with, I want to say, was Toto on there? I don't remember. But do you remember what show I'm talking about?
I remember what show you're talking about. I do not remember which person we had on for the podcast.
Yeah, it was that subpar looking horror anime. It was reported that they were gonna go on board with the show. However, when the show finally came out in 2024, Drive's name was not listed in the credits. The animation production was credited towards an animation production company called Fugaku. And then episodes 2 and 3 were credited as being produced by Studio Akatsuki. However, Hiroshi Nagahama, who was the series director, was not listed in the credits for the storyboards, and a guy named Yuji Moriyama took his place instead. And then the final episode credits listed no one as the series director.
That's always a good sign.
And then also
no series
that
director.
Episode 4 had 3 episode directors.
So basically what you're saying is it was a complete mess.
Yeah, and there's a little sub-note here that says 3 episode directors were crediting in the opening credit crawl of the show, but then 5 were credited in the ending credits.
So they can't even keep track of how many episode directors there are. Got it.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess.
The anime industry, am I right?
I could think of no scarier thing for the month of October than current year anime production.
Yeah, that is definitely accurate. And
well, now
I
that we
guess
got
for how
the,
chaotic it was, the final product turned out visually fine, more or less.
I mean, yeah, compared to
considering
the
the
manga,
chaos.
ultimately it can't really hold a candle, but if every
Well,
episode
obviously.
looked as great as episode 1, I would say that it could have been a serviceable anime. Maybe not like the kind that's like so good it's like, oh, I'll never need to go back to the manga again. But
Oh, it's definitely not. Because
yeah,
I don't
no.
even think the visuals are the biggest problem with the show. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Because they're bad at times, but it's like they're really, really, really bad when they're bad, but then it goes back to being perfectly serviceable. Like, oh, this is fine. I mean, I wish it had more time in the oven that it clearly needed, but you know what? I've seen worse. The problem is that, oh my lord, the pacing. Oh my god, the pacing.
This is definitely a things happen kind of show where
things happen and then more things happen, and they're all happening simultaneously, everywhere, all the time, all at once. It's constant. It is almost nauseating the way this show is paced, and not in the way where it's like, oh, I'm so horrified, I feel like sick to my stomach. So it's more in the sense of things are happening so rapidly and so continuously that I feel like I need a break from the show to not have things constantly happening. Like, I would pause. It was the reason why I say episode 3 was the worst one for me, is because that was where I just got so fucking sick of this show's pacing and the overall feel of being in it. I paused that episode multiple times to just, like, take a break, get some coffee, listen to some Lemon Demon songs, and I'm like, "Okay, I'll actually get back to the show I'm supposed to be watching." Like, it took me the longest to get through episode 3 because
Yeah,
the
but
pacing is so
by the
bad.
time I was like starting episode 4, I was like, I can't, I can't afford to take notes because the first episode I was like, okay, I've got 2 pages worth of notes, and like because that was a good episode. Then even though the show started to decline in both animation quality and low key writing quality, like I would still have like episode 2, I have nearly a page and a half of notes. Episode 3, I like slowed down taking notes and they got less detailed. I only took half a page of notes. And then episode 4 was like I got 5 minutes into the episode and I was like, I can't. My brain is broken. It's fried. My brain, the lobes in my brain, the wrinkles are now formed into a spiral. I cannot afford to take down any more information. I'll double the length of like the watch time of the series by pausing just to catch up on all the things that happened.
So I have a kind of similar experience with my notes. So I've gone on record in stating that when something is good, I tend not to take that many notes of it because I just want to keep watching it. So episode 1, I have like 2 notes for. They're both long paragraphs, but they're, still 2 notes. Episode 2, I have the most notes for because that was when, once again, problems are starting to happen. The pacing is starting to get even. I mean, I already had issues with the pacing in episode 1 because I had read the manga first. Episode 2 is where it got really bad, and then episode 3 is when the exhaustion starts setting in. I have like 5 notes for it, but each of them are short. I don't have any notes for episode 4. I just didn't take any. There are precisely 0 notes for that entire episode.
Yeah, and it's not just that the pacing of events that maybe it's more of a problem with the anime because the manga, they having just read volume 1, I can tell like they're jumping all over the place, they're cutting content. It's not a faithful adaptation.
So, as someone who read the manga first, I think I am in the best place to explain exactly what is wrong with the pacing of this anime because it was even early into episode 1 I noticed it and I hated it. And the reason why is because, okay, so this anime is paced in such a way where it's everything happening all at once. So events that happened separately in the manga are happening concurrently now. And it's all, you could argue it's thematic, it's spiraling out of control even faster. But here's the issue, right? So the manga is paced one story at a time. Here's a complete thought, right? So you get the beginning, the intro, and we build into this, horrifying edge, and we gradually, we basically have a 3-act structure in each chapter, is what I'm getting at. And what that does for you is that even though the manga, I would say, is still very quickly paced, it feels like a good kind of fast pace where, the beginning of each chapter marks the sort of resting point where things are not normal, but relatively speaking, we're still building to the strangeness and the horror. So you have the sort of calmer first part of the chapter that sort of resets you. You aren't so exhausted with being bombarded with information. And I think that does a lot for how it feels to watch the show. Not watch the show, read the manga. I'm talking about the manga here. Watching the show, on the other hand, they really cut down on those beginning sections. Take, for example, the, first chapter of the manga, where we see Shuichi's dad just staring transfixed at the spiral of an empty snail shell. That is cut out of the anime entirely. And the manga serves to be this little spark that's like, oh, what is this? Like, I'm getting curious about the plot of this manga. Like, why is he staring at that snail shell? Nothing's happening that's too crazy yet, but there's still things being built up in the background, and it's relatively calm at this stage. The anime just kind of gets rid of that. It gets into the plot as quickly as it conceivably can, and then just everything happens again. And I hate it. And also because of the pacing, there are some stories that feel like I know they're definitely fleshed out more in the manga, but because I haven't read the entire thing, you know, I don't know what's up with it. Like, okay, Jack in the Box Boy. What the fuck was up with him? He
Yeah.
exists for like probably 3 minutes in total and then gets ran over. I'm gonna stop this car with my love, and then it dies. And that's the end of him. Just gone
except
now.
except it's not the end of him, because then he comes back as a
Uh,
zombie in a post-credit
he
scene.
does.
And then he, just so he can jump on the suspension of a car that's been wound up into his body like a Jack in the Box for one more, weird thing to happen. And then that's it. Then nothing happens. He just shows up to be weird, and he dies again.
Yeah, there was definitely something that happens to him that was more substantive in the manga. But in the anime, it's kind of just, oh, okay. I feel like they should have cut out some of these stories. Like, okay, Snail Boy, right? Granted, you can't really cut that out because they're cooking escargot by the end of the series in order to survive. So that is an important chapter to get. But it's just the guy who actually turns into a snail, I feel like would have been a character in the manga, like have something going on, but in the anime he's just some fat kid and then he turns into a snail because he's really slow. And there's this guy who acts like perplexingly in a way that I can't I feel like it would have made more sense why he's acting like this in the manga. He's like, "Oh yeah, Snail Boy over there. He's just eating grass in the chicken coop. What a loser. What a piece of shit." And then he turns into a snail too.
And then
But like,
Junji Ito
why?
said gay rights.
Fellas, are the gay snails good gay representation? I need the opinion of the LGBT community on this one.
I'm gonna ask my girlfriend if she would still love me if I were a snail.
Oh god, it's just like that one old Japanese novel where he turns into a cockroach, and then his
When
entire
I
family like disowns him. I think. I don't know. I haven't read
that's
it.
that's fucked up. I have written in my notes when the dad jumps into the wooden tub and then contorts his body into a big spiral. And I just haven't wrote down. I turned myself into a spiral, Shuichi. I'm Spiral Rick.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah,
I
like,
get.
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, going back to the comparing the manga to the anime. I did kind of like that the manga handled the whole thing with the Shuichi's mom and dad like at once. Granted, well, I suppose it's not a horrible thing that the anime, kind of adapted in a way so it's like we're following the mom through her madness, and because they both Kirie and Shuichi happen to be at the hospital, then we get the stuff where like she finds out about the cochlear spirals in her ears, and then she tries to cut him out with scissors, stab him out, and then she kills herself by doing that. Like I find it interesting that the manga deals with that immediately in the first volume. It's like one, two. It's the first two chapters. We see that before we see the Azami with her iconic forehead scar spiral. But then in the anime, we see her get admitted to the hospital. Then we see her like die. She dies in episode 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like by the time in I guess the manga equivalent would be volume like late volume 2, she would have died if this were like a direct adaptation. But the cutting of events, it's not bad, but like it definitely shows a different level of priority. Like you
Well,
said, a commitment to keep having things happening and not like conclude one story and then move on to the next story.
see, my biggest problem with shuffling the events in that way comes later when okay, so the dad is, I mean, first of all, this story is so truncated in the anime. Like it barely, I probably would have forgotten it even happened had I not read the manga. But the dad, he's like making spiral pottery, and then it's like actually Shuichi, the remnants of Shuichi's family, because it's the ash from the fucking cremation that's going into the lake where he's getting the clay from. You know, they're sort of immortalized and screaming in pain in his kiln, right? Barely even has any impact in the anime. In the manga, it's an entire chapter. But what's what I think is emotionally important for the story is that in the manga, this is the point where, oh, you know, Shuichi isn't eating for a while, so now, you know, we're bringing him over. And, you know, we're like, oh, you must have been real hungry, Shuichi. And in the manga, you go like, oh, yeah, I mean, he just lost both his parents. Of course he's like that. In the anime, so much fucked shit has happened by this point that it's kind of just like, where was this before? Like, I get it. I get why you'd be like that. Your mom did just die. But everything's been fucked for a while now. Like, I feel like this should have happened earlier. It makes more sense emotionally and narratively to have that scene earlier on, in my view, anyway.
Yeah, it's I guess that part is like the least of the anime's problems in the
Oh, by
grand scheme of
far.
things.
But it's little things like that that you lose in this adaptation that I think are really important. Like, okay, things are happening so quickly and there's so little time to rest. It's hard to gauge like how traumatized the characters are at any given time. Like, what is their emotional state at any point? I mean, I can tell they're not having a good time, but other than that, like, there's no time to just rest and sit with a character, and so it's kind of just like I, I I can't really feel for the characters in the anime adaptation that much, you know? There's times where I can fleetingly, but in general, like they do not register even. It's just the constant manic trip of things happening and no time for me to, you know, check in with the characters and be like, "Hey, how you feeling? What's up? Are you having a
I'm
good time?"
skimming through the manga right now. I jumped ahead to the beginning of volume 2 where it has the spring boy, the Jack in the Box boy, and you are right. They do handle him in a lot more concise and makes more of a sensual way. So they do dive into his backstory a little bit more. They flesh him out more than the anime gives him, and they instead of him coming back as a zombie and then showing up just to freak out the Shuichi and Kirie and the typhoon, uh he gets run over. Kirie takes the Jack in the Box like with because she feels bad that that was the last thing that he was going to do for her to give her a gift. But then the clown Jack in the Box starts talking to her, be like, "It's your fault that he died. It's your fault." And then like she gets like worried and like, "Shuichi, we have to go visit his grave. I need to make sure about something." And so they visit his grave and they're like, "Huh, that's odd. He's not there." And then he is in another grave, all like contorted like a zombie and jumping at them, he's chasing them. And then the suspension thing happens with the spring in his body, and he falls over dead again. And then that's its whole chapter.
Yeah, that makes way more sense. Whereas in the anime, they do this like really cringy zoom on the Jack in the Box where he suddenly gains like
And
a lot of detail and a menacing
yeah, then
expression.
it
Like,
becomes like a
ooh,
jump
are you
scare.
scared yet? I got jump scare vibes from it. Like it's
I got a little bit jump scared for it just because like nothing like that has happened in the show yet. It's all been
well, I
like,
didn't get jump scared. I just rolled my eyes at it. I was like, this is the lamest thing I have ever seen.
well, like it doesn't even make sense like non-diegetically. Like what? Like it's like a fade effect, and then there's like a roar from the Jack in the Box because it goes from like a a normal painted on clown face to a ooh scary I'm inside your walls face. And
Look,
so
man, the
that
animatronics get a little quirky after midnight.
yeah, but like it's never addressed, and because in this
Yeah,
version of the story she doesn't
I
take
didn't
the
even
Jack in
think
the
about
Box
that.
home. Like, that face that the Jack in the Box makes is the face that makes in the manga when Kirie takes it home. It's like, you are the reason he died, Kirie.
Yeah, but there's
So I think it's
a
them
reason
attempting
for
to
it in
pay
the
lip
manga.
service to the manga. Like, hey, remember
Yeah.
this iconic panel from the manga?
But in
Like,
the
it feels
anime,
like
it's just their
they had to cram
apropos of
in
nothing.
everything, like all the iconic bits, even if they had to like surgically remove them in order to like make them get in there. Like, any port in a storm, any which way we're gonna do it, it has to get done.
It's just a mess. Like, honestly, the visuals, they're a problem, but the pacing is what kills it for me. It's so bad. And I feel like we should have just had more emphasis on maybe trimming out some stories that aren't as necessary and focusing on, like, okay, here's all the things that are most essential to tell this story. We're going to truncate them tastefully and then put them together such that we can have, this narrative in maybe not its complete form, but a form that is serviceable for the anime. Whereas here, it's just like everything. We have everything in some form. Not the form where they're good, but they're here. You like
Yeah,
that,
there's
right?
also I'm skimming more. There's like entire stories that they've cut out. Like, okay, the most stupid thing that happens in this entire anime is the fucking, what was it they called, the butterfly gang.
Oh, that.
As soon as
I
I
saw
saw them
them
like
flying
riding the
around.
tornadoes, like they're fucking, like they have magic shonen powers, I was just like, okay, what the fuck is going on? Why are they not getting like torn limb from limb like literally everyone else who's shown being caught in a tornado has been?
That was goofy.
So I'm skimming the manga and I see like there are these orphan kids who like are so fed up with like how society's been treating them that they're using the typhoons as a way to get back at them, because they figured out that like if you make loud movements or no, not loud movements, like big movements and loud noises, you can create those mini typhoons. So they're just like, you know what? Fuck everything, and they like pick up big slabs of like debris and wreckage, and they start swinging them, and the wind force creates the typhoons and starts like blowing people away and destroying the town. And they kind of form the butterfly gang through that, and then that's how they figure out that they can ride the tornadoes. But like in the anime, we open episode 4 being like, oh look, there's the butterfly gang who figured out how to ride tornadoes and they're just fucking shit up. Like, okay, I guess we can ride tornadoes now.
Yeah, like every single thing you say about the manga makes me go like, huh, yeah, that is like like, why? Why would you even watch the anime at this point?
Yeah, I feel like reading the entirety of Uzumaki will severely dampen your any enjoyment you could have already gotten or would have gotten from the anime. But now let's put the manga to one side for the rest of this discussion and focus on the anime as presented as is. How do you feel about the story and the characters?
So the story, it's so hard to put down the manga talking about the story, but the overall story, I like what it's getting at. Just none of the ways it has. I mean, okay, the good parts. I can't I can't talk about this without mentioning the manga obviously doing it better. It's so hard.
All right, yeah. From here on out,
Story.
holistically, we know that the manga probably does it better, but we're judging the anime on its own merits here.
All right, there are some interesting ideas, and I like the way, I like the ideas. The ideas are creative and cool and occasionally creepy. No, and what I like most about it, right, is that okay, I like the narrative of the town gradually being destroyed and the dread that it instills in you. Because not much of this anime is really scary per se, but there definitely is an atmosphere that gets more palpable as the series continues, where it's like, okay, like things are like fucked. Like it's real bad.
Yeah, like it kind of feels like in like an Akira or Evangelion level of, well, actually no, Evangelion's more biblical, but definitely more Akira like ending of an apocalypse.
The thing that it reminded me of most, and this is a deep, obscure cut here, but have you ever heard of Pathologic?
I think so. Is that's a game, right?
Yes.
Okay, I've heard of it. I've definitely never played it, and I don't think I've seen a playthrough of it.
So I've never played it either, but H Bomber Guy has a great video where he reviews it and talks about, basically spoils the entire thing. So I know what the game is about. And it's also about a town being gradually destroyed. But one of the things that, to draw a little connection here, right? Throughout most of the anime, my one question was, why the fuck won't you just leave? Just leave the town, goddammit. Just go. And this is addressed a little more in the manga. And I assume, like, with more downtime. Fuck, I mentioned the manga again. But it was relevant. It was relevant, I swear. Right? This is at least paid lip service to in the manga. In the anime, doesn't even get brought up until eventually we're like, oh yeah, if you try to leave, like, you'll just walk in a circle. If you try to leave by sea, you'll get caught in a fucking whirlpool that drags you down to the bottom of the sea. Like, finally, an answer. But you could have left earlier on, I think. Like, maybe? Could you at least question it? Could you at least ask, hey, maybe I should go? Maybe I would have left this town like halfway through episode 1. Like goddamn, but in
I mean,
Pathologic, like it
maybe
is
I don't know.
explicitly addressed that you are like the
Curse
government has
that you
banned
can't leave.
anyone from going in and out of the town because there's a plague going around. So, like you just have to say something like, "Oh, well, it's the curse, bro. You can't leave because there's a curse." Like, okay, I'd buy that. But there has to be something, because things get so fucked that it's like, why not just leave? They get, because of the truncated pacing, they get fucked so much quicker that it's like, why are you here? Just leave, just go.
Yeah, bro. If it were me, I would have fucked off as soon as I saw maybe I would have been traumatized enough by my Spiral dad, Spiral Rick, shoving himself into a box. But then when I see Snail Boy, I'm getting the fuck out of there.
Like, on top of that, like people as early as the beginning of episode 2 are saying like, "Oh yeah, I mean there's spirals above our crematorium and the other towns only have the spirals when we have ours." So, okay, the town is weird. Get out. Get out. Why hasn't the government issued an evacuation warning yet? Why?
I mean, according to episode 4, there's a thing where it's like, all right, so we're going to I wonder if this is like a cyclical event that this happens every century or few centuries or so. And maybe everyone in the town, like, because it prevents people from leaving, or anyone who comes in is never able to leave. It's like a perfect closed off loop where no one is able to like pass along the memory of the former town. Everyone like dies or gets consumed by the spiral. So then every century, a few centuries or so, the events can resume anew, as hinted by, from what I gathered in the I know I said not to reference the manga, but I actually was curious, so I checked the end as a point of comparison. That ending bit in the anime with those new characters, starting like re-triggering the events of the first episode by being like, "Hey, my boyfriend, have you ever thought about getting out of this town? Like, have you noticed all the spirals?" That is anime original. The manga just ends with the scene of Shuichi and Kirie being like, you know what? I give up. I can't fight this shit anymore. Let's just become one in the spiral tower together and let ourselves be consumed by the spiral.
So Uzumaki, I'm curious if it's actually an adaptation of something called The Lost Chapter. is what I'm seeing because I saw it on AniList, and it's a short one shot that I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
sure
it
how exactly it's related to it.
okay, I also skimmed it while we were talking in the podcast. Apparently it's a cut chapter of the manga that Junji Ito decided was like, I don't need, like, it doesn't need to be in the final thing, but I'll make one more thing because he finished it and it's
Mm.
included in the big hardcover book that I have right in front of me. It's also like fucking rad as hell, and also maybe low key ripping off Akira because so what happens is there's this guy who's like obsessed with spy who, what do you know, he gets obsessed with spirals, but he's an astronomer, and he gets obsessed by like seeing the spirals in the night sky. And then when he sees like the galaxy, like the swirling of the galaxy, it's like, I get it, we're all just part of one big spiral, I feel the energy. And then he starts like expanding and exploding almost identically to how Kaneda, no, not Kaneda, Tetsuo does in Akira.
I see. But
And
on the overall point you were go on.
no, that was the overall point. Yeah, you can finish that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but on what you were saying about like, oh, it's the spiral, it's the cyclical loop. Like I get it, and you can explain it away with was just the magic of the spiral, bro. But I feel like that's something that needs to be addressed just somehow explicitly because until that point, until I mean, granted, I guessed that the answer would just be spiral magic. And it probably is, but that still feels like something you should have a more explicit answer to. Like, have some part of the show that just motions towards the fact that, hey, like, you can't leave. There is something going on here. Like, if you try to leave, you can't. Everything's messed up. Because until you do that, my question will always be, why the fuck aren't you leaving? And why isn't the government getting involved somehow?
I guess like you said, spiral magic. You're right. They should have probably been like, because Shuichi suggested Kirie at the very start of both the manga and the anime. Hey, Kirie, can we like get the fuck out of here together, please? And you'd think that after the fucking snail shit, they would attempt to get out of there, but then be like, huh, like the roads lead back into themselves, like we can't get out.
Yeah, it's just perplexing.
Yeah, there's definitely
So that
a
was frustrating.
yeah, definitely a leap in logic you have to take here. And especially be like, how have all of these people not like trying to get out in droves when they see shit like the people getting drilled to death in the hospital, the fucking what are the snail shit? Like yeah, the entire school should be like telling everyone, "Hey, kids are turning into snails and laying snail baby eggs. We need to get the fuck out of here."
Well, that's
Or
what
when they
makes it more
see
perplexing when
and
the obvious bully character is like, "Oh yeah, that loser. He's just eating grass in the chicken coop as a snail." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" No, like even I would even have trouble believing a sociopath would say that. Like a legitimate psychopath. Like you would at least have self-preservation and be like, "Oh, that's scary. That could happen to me." That would be I feel like
well,
anyone's
I
thought.
guess he didn't think it could have happened to him, but now that that people saw that like both of them turned into snails, it's like, okay, it's not just like this is a one-time thing.
It's just that the way all the events play out, once again, it's this emphasis on things happening and less emphasis on the human reaction to those events. Where because we lack, there's a lot of action, not enough reaction. And because we lack enough of that reaction, it's kind of hard to peg where each character stands at any given point, other than, yeah, she seems pretty traumatized. That seems kind of fucked. Shuichi, he seems to know what's going on, and he doesn't seem to like what's going on. Other than that, it's just like, I don't know, there's not. I mean, I guess that gets into another issue where to me, the characters are kind of lacking.
Yeah, like they don't really have any arcs. They're just kind of like they're like horror character or like the generic standard horror characters. They exist to have bad things happen to them.
Yeah, it's hard to even list any of Kirie's character traits.
She's
She's a
kind, I
girl.
guess, because she helps people as much as she can. That's
As far
it.
as I can tell, she's supposed to be the every woman. She is the ordinary person thrust into this situation, and Shuichi is the one who, once again, seems to know more of what is happening, has pieced together more in his head, but
Yeah,
that's about
who
it.
was it that said that quote of something like, "If you want to show something like really scary, have it show it happening to a woman"?
I've never heard that quote before.
I'm pretty sure. Okay, like uh, show scary things to women. I'm
I'm not
pretty
sure if
sure like
that'll
that.
give you the quote.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Because I'm pretty sure that that was a quote. Like, because like there's something about like if the purity of women and like how men are like supposed to like are brought up raised to like thinking like you have to be like the protector, you have to protect women as like your societal role in life. But and so then when you see scary things happen to them, it's like more of like a loss of innocence type thing.
Well, the corollary to that would be show fuck shit happening to a dog, then it's really scary.
Well, yeah, well, I think there's still a disconnect
And then they'll
between.
become John Wick.
Yeah, because yeah, there's a disconnect there because yeah, you can love a dog like a person, but a dog can't react in the same way a person can.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh no. You want to know actually the true corollary to that would be things are even more fucked if you show it happening to an actual character that you care about. That would be my counter to that. Hey,
Yeah,
just make me
I would
invested and it doesn't
be
matter what gender they are.
I would be like more invested in Kirie's character if she had more to her besides she's a nice girl.
She her character literally begins and ends at girl, who is girl. She exists. There you go. I mean, I her character is actually the most interesting in episode 4 because we get to see her from the perspective of the news lady, where she's, someone who knows how to survive in this apocalyptic wasteland that they've found themselves in. And so she seems really, aware of the current situation and aware of her surroundings and, seems in the know about this. That's the part where she's the most interesting. But before that point, she's kind of whatever.
Yeah, like we said, there's nothing beyond her besides like she is a vessel of which to exposit the horrors of these spirals.
Yeah, and speaking of the horrors, episode 4 is my favorite in terms of plot. It is where things are the most fucked, the most conceptually interesting. That like the town is basically in ruins by that point. Houses are destroyed and then get rebuilt into a spiral. People are doing pseudo quasi cannibalism towards snail people. Everything is messed beyond belief. And eventually, we travel to the heart of the spiral and find the ruins of whatever ancient civilization built, just this place underground that the town has been built upon. And we get to see the secret behind everything. It was some ruins. I mean, they look pretty, so I think that's a decent reveal.
Uh, I low key like that the spiral ruins are like instead of like we see like the spiral people who like are like an ancient race. I like the idea that the spiral itself is like a living entity and just it's just simply exerting its will throughout the town.
I mean, I feel like seeing the spiral people would just be kind of Oh no,
overkill, cheesy.
goofy, yeah,
Yeah,
cheesy. Like, okay, well, they can theoretically explain it, so that makes it less. I mean, there's horror in the unknown, and so just seeing the remnants
it's
to
definitely
me
scary
is
if it's like an
definitely
unstoppable
better.
force of nature than a oh, it's it's the monster. It was Michael Myers the whole time.
It being an unstoppable force of nature is actually, like, to me, one of the most interesting parts of the plot where you can never really make sense of what is going on because the explanation is just
It's like
spiral magic.
Cthulhu.
But it's kind of interesting that it's just spiral magic. It feels harder to grasp and more intimidating, and I like that about the nature of this curse.
Yeah,
Uh, oh,
the
go on.
events that happen are all cool in a vacuum, especially I'm sorry to break the self-imposed rule, but once again, you'll get it in the manga. Like a lot of the shots are iconic, like the Azami shot when she's like, "Hey, has my scar gotten worse? So, like, can you like see what's happening to my eye?" And then we see
That was
that like
raw.
the spiral scar has like bored into her forehead, like inward, and her eye is like exposed. But and now it's like it's the spin of the spiral is pulling so much that it scoops up the spiral, kind of uh like one of those ball in a spiral gumball machine or like little dispensary toy machines. It's just going around and around and around till like it swirls down and then you can't even see it anymore. It gets consumed. And then later she gets consumed by she eats a suitor that was trying to be her boyfriend and also herself in like a almost like a black hole.
Yeah, like the events are crazy, and the connecting thread, as far as I can tell, is just
Spiral magic.
obsession. Well, yeah, but also obsession. The idea that, you look into the spiral and you're utterly transfixed. You become obsessed with it. Like, for
It's
example,
definitely cool
Azami.
thematically how it's just like it's what is a spiral? It is a just one line but drawn in a way that's like it's not just a boring straight line that goes on forever. It has a pattern. Like it constantly expanding outwards, even yet maintaining a form of uniform like symmetry and asymmetry at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we associate spirals, as imagery with hypnosis and being transfixed. And so that iconography is effective for the overall theme of the story, which is obsession, where characters, the way the spiral consumes them is all, I mean, at least as far as I can tell, almost always related to obsession in some way, even if at times it can be rather tenuous. Like, okay, all the pregnant women who are taken over by mosquitoes, I guess they want to suck the blood. I mean, I guess they're obsessed with blood. That's pretty. I guess that fits. No, that
I don't
doctor sure
I
was
don't know if they
obsessed with
were
getting that baby back
possessed
in
by
the
mosquito.
woman's stomach.
I don't know if they were maybe like possessed by mosquitoes or maybe they just like copied the will of mosquitoes. Like the whole thing with the baby shit, that was like fucking weird. Of where so they had the drills, they drilled into the other patients, they were all and it was all pregnant women, and they would drink the blood from them like mosquitoes because only female mosquitoes suck blood because they're doing it to feed their babies. And so they're feeding their babies inside them by drinking the blood of others, which is already fucked by itself. But then mushrooms start to grow out of the baby's stomachs, which are actually placentas, reforming them so they can go back inside the womb.
Honestly, that entire thing feels like a side quest in retrospect. What was that
Yeah,
about?
like, what does that have to do with obsession? Were they
You
obsessed
got
with
me
like
there.
return? Were they obsessed with returning back to the warm comfort of the mother's womb?
I guess they were. I mean, the obvious thing would just be, hey, that book probably did it gooder. But talking about it in a vacuum, yeah, that that part probably weakens the theme about obsession. Whereas most of the other stuff, it's very obvious. Like, her dad is obsessed with making, the spiral pottery. Uh, like the Shuichi's dad, he's obsessed with spirals in general. His mom is obsessed with, yeah, spirals once again, but this time with more of a texture to it because of her trauma. The girl classmate who's like who's having a hair off with Kirie, she's obsessed with being noticed and, gaining people's attention. Azami is obsessed with Shuichi and trying to get his affection. Jack in the Box Boy, same, but for Kirie. Like, there is absolutely a thematic through line
So,
overall.
let me ask you this then. What was Katayama's obsession? He was the slow boy who was the first person to turn into a snail.
So see, you also got me there because he was obsessed with being slow. Everything he did was slow. That's his one character trait.
I thought like because he was going slow that it was like the spiral curse was just like fucking with him. So like, oh, you're a slow guy, you're gonna turn into a snail then. Isn't that like kind of like fucked up? So I thought maybe okay, they turn into other animals based on like their personality traits. Nope, the snail's for everyone. Just because they have spiral shells.
Yeah, the most interesting thing about the spiral curse is, Junji Ito is clearly a madman. Like, the guy has some insane ideas, and
Yeah, like
they're
he
executed to the most ludicrous degree to make a very interesting piece texturally.
I'm just saying, man, roly polies were right there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that they were right there.
If you wanted some more variety in your animal transfiguration, or I guess insect transfiguration, I guess you could also make a case for armadillos, but maybe I'm pretty sure armadillos are not native to Japan, so it'd be like, oh, what foreign creature is this?
Yeah, but the overall texture of the story, it really is just a texture piece to me, where it's like, okay, all this insane shit is happening in a very brief span, but because it is so insane, it is kind of entertaining in short bursts. I can see how watching this weekly would be the superior experience. There's a more obvious superior experience, but we need not talk about it. But for the anime, watching this weekly would probably be the best way to do it because you don't get exhausted in just the constant barrage of things happening if you binge it like I did. No, you watch it, you get your insane dose of psychosis on a weekly basis and then you move on.
Yeah, well, what would you say was your favorite story or thing that happened in the anime?
Everything in episode 4, but that feels a little bit like cheating. So other than that, I'd say it would be the lighthouse. Because the lighthouse was probably the only one that legitimately creeped me out. Because I could very clearly imagine myself in that scenario, and it's claustrophobic. You're going up this lighthouse that doesn't seem to end. By the way, like, she gets eviscerated by the lighthouse lights going on at sundown, and she's just kind of she's got like a few bandages on afterward.
I
Like,
think it's
she's in
implied that
crutches.
they fell down the stairs and were able to escape the light, unlike that one kid who got burned to a crisp.
I mean, how much
They never
falling
say
did
it.
she do? I've got some falling to do. Yeah, like, it felt like they were still pretty high up the lighthouse.
Yeah. Well,
It's a
hey,
bit weird.
hey, that mean you know what? You know what this means? Power scaling. That means Kirie Uzumaki is faster than light.
True. True. Kirie Uzumaki versus Naruto Uzumaki, who would win?
Uh, Naruto. It's still not a contest.
But she's faster than light, bro. She just
So
has
is
to run into
Naruto.
him. Oh. I did not know that.
Yeah,
Well, there you go.
bro. Naruto gets crazy, especially when you get into Boruto. Uh, I would say my favorite story that the lighthouse is definitely good. Um, I'm trying to think of like one that's like I think I'll always remember for like the right reasons. Because I think I'll always remember the baby mushroom placentas, but not for not
That's just
necessarily
weird.
because more so because I just said the words baby mushroom placentas. um I don't want to say the spiral scar with Azami because I feel like that because I knew everyone knows about that because that's the most iconic shot from Uzumaki. Um, I would say my favorite would have to be ah darn. I'm scrolling through my notes. I'm trying to think of like what is
There's
like
so
the
much that happens that it's kind of hard to sort through
yeah.
it all.
I'm sifting through them all in my head. Um. I guess I kind of liked the boy and the girl who ran away together, and then because they set up the thing with the snakes at the beginning, and then they turned into what is essentially the Loch Ness monster.
Yeah, I like the idea of the row house they're in, where their two families are constantly fighting. Though I'm honestly not entirely sure how I feel about the ending of that. I mean, they did set it up. It does work fine, but I don't know. It's just kind of weird.
I as a concept of like for a scary thing to happen, I do like the idea of like pregnant human mothers copying the behavior of mosquitoes by killing people and just cutting holes in them to drink their blood to feed their young. I feel like that's like wickedly fucked up, but in like a cool way. It kind of loses me with the baby mushroom placenta tacked on, but like if you segment that from it, I feel like it's like I think that's my favorite thing.
Look, they just want to be returned to the womb. Come on, Neon. They're
I
babies. They're
guess which
adorable babies. You got to give them what they want.
I
What's
guess
so wrong
we've
about
all
being
had one of
returned
those
to the
days where it's
womb,
like
Neon?
I would have stayed in the womb if I knew there'd be days like this. I would have stayed in the nutsack.
Bro, I would have stayed in the ethereal fucking void where nothing exists.
And have my consciousness half of my consciousness transposed into the sperm and then the other half in the egg of two random people on the planet.
No, I just not exist at all. That's where I want to go.
I think
Not
I wonder if
actually.
that's how
I'm
consciousness
joking,
works.
YouTube.
Um yeah, I feel like I don't have much else to say about Uzumaki.
I mean, I can look through my notes, but I think I got to all the big bits.
I guess I did also like that the mom was her seeing spirals in like everyday life was making her go insane. And
That
like stuff
was
that didn't
really
even end up
compelling,
being
yeah.
cursed, like she just saw an IV drip tube that was already bundled in a spiral, like the spiral in like a nurse's hair bun, the spirals on her fingertips that she cut off.
Yeah, I guess my only other notes are like small individual instances of the pacing just being really weird. Like after we see Snail Boy for the first time, Kirie immediately like rushes out of the classroom, starts getting her hair cut. And while it makes sense on a logical level, like, oh, I'm cursed, I need to cut my hair. Like, I don't want the spirals here anymore. Like, that makes sense to me, but tonally, it is a bit of whiplash, where it's kind of like, oh, we go from Snail Boy, we don't even linger on it for a second, now we're just getting a haircut. I'm like, aren't we gonna check back on that? That feels like kind of a big thing to happen. There's snail people now. But okay, like just get your hair cut. Like that's whatever.
Yeah, the real scariest thing that happened to Crunchy watching this is when they cut Kirie's hair.
Oh yeah, that was traumatic.
They
That was
turned her
devastating.
into
I
a
cried.
a little porcelain Victorian boy.
I shed a tear. I really did.
Low key she kind of rocked it.
Yeah, honestly. Like with the kind of show this is, I honestly thought she looked fine with it.
Oh yeah, the last note I have that I have to make sure I mention before the episode ends is when Azami consumed herself in the black hole and her legs like get sucked in and then it just like ends with a little pop. Did you also think of the hot dog gag from regular show?
No, but now I'm thinking of it, and it's a perfect comparison.
uh yeah, all right. Yeah, I've said my piece. What would you give the anime as a final score?
Episode 4 was so interesting, I guess, in terms of plot that I almost wanted to give it an extra point, but I think I just gotta keep it at like a 4.
I'm gonna give it a 5. It was the whole thing itself wasn't bad, but it was definitely botched. Like, yeah, the animation did suffer. The way they chose to adapt it was kind of sometimes appropriate, sometimes cookie cutter. Overall, the final product did feel like an inferior way to consume even the narrative. Like whether you prefer like the stunning visuals of the manga or like the sometimes really good animation of the anime is like a personal thing, but I feel like the way they cut up the narrative just feels flat out inferior.
Like, plainly, obviously inferior. I think, yeah, I mean, I read the manga first, and so I came in with that sort of coloring to my experience. And once again, even as early as episode 1, I was like, this is the worst version. Like, obviously, just based on how the story is told. I think, given that there is such a better version, the anime has, outside of episode 1, been rendered completely obsolete. Like, why even watch it? It's exhausting to watch, which is rarely something you want to say about your entertainment. I wanted to be doing anything else.
Low-key same. I was like, damn, I would rather like finish reading the manga so I could say I read Uzumaki and I could be more cultured.
Yeah, I felt that same urge. I was like, I just want to go back to the manga instead. It's good. It's like actually good, and this is not.
Yeah, I guess that's all we have to say about it. Truly the scariest thing we could have possibly talked about in our Halloween special. A bad anime adaptation.
The funniest part is you put this on the planning list, on the schedule, even before we knew how bad the animation would get.
Well, it was still a horror
even before it was
icon, whether it was good or
Yeah.
bad. But I guess for content, this will turn out to be good. We'll see.
And with that, I think we are done.
Yeah, that'll do her for this episode of the Castaway Anime Podcast Halloween Special. If you enjoyed, please give us your thoughts on what we talked about today down in the comments and what you'd like us to talk about in the future. If you want to keep up with Castaway Anime and never miss an episode, make sure to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to Crunchy's channel and check out all our socials linked in the description below. That'll do her for this spooky episode of Castaway Anime. I'm Neon Manta.
And I'm Crunchy Bagels.
And you'll see us next time.